allowing gravity to stream through the body, connect me to the ground through the legs. So I'm just trying to get through the legs and into the ground. So the first instruction is always mind in the down channel. Yeah, so we normally just sort of just bounce a little, but it's not. You don't really want an imposed bounce. It's more like gravity's playing with you. So just it's a woozy bounce. And just have the hands on the down chair and just feel yourself gathering into this area. And so you just consider this point. So what you're trying to do is relax it. So you can think of this place with lots of arrows pointing out of it. So that is your relaxation away from your center, so an expansion. The gravity and the legs are actually going in the opposite direction, are pressing into this center. So we have a balance between my relaxation and the compression that I'm under, between gravity and the ground. So Danjian is very much your personal space. So it's where, so we're trying to get to a place before we've started coming out. Yeah. So before these centers have become activated really. So we're just coming in, we're withdrawing into our own internal space and centering that here. So the closest we've ever been to this is when we were an embryo in the womb. So John always used to say, you know, when you really get into your Tai Chi, then it feels like you've come home. And for the Chinese, that home is the womb. It's coming back to that space where you're just curled up and any movements are just natural movements rather than designed movements. So just feel the spine. It's like a very simple curve, the curve of the fetus's spine. So you haven't got that S shape in your spine yet. It hasn't developed. So here. So because this curve at the back is undeveloped, the feeling is that the Danjian is receding into my body rather than popping out over the top, which it would be if I was walking or running or even just expressing myself from here. So everything's coming in and down. So the tailbone is sort of curling under. So you're flowing down the spine, and that is lifting. So there's a point where it starts coming up by virtue of the fact that you're slightly leaning backwards. Okay? So that this area here is like a basket that is holding the Danjian inside. And it's actually lifting. So your Danjian feels as though it's actually being lifted inside your body by your sinking. So this is, John's very much into that. So any sense of coming out or forwards tends to do this. So you'll bring the feet, the legs will come up, and this will tip forward, so we don't want that. We want this going down and forwards, and this area here, like a scoop, like a cauldron or a basket, is cradling your Danjian. The eyes are seeing, but they're not giving. The eyes are receiving and feel as though the information that's coming in is going down to here, rather than into your brain. So it's completely non-judgmental eyes. So detached. Yeah, the Buddhists talk about detachment, non-attachment. So when you're in your down chair, you're just completely detached. So it's a place of meditation. Okay. And now just feel the flow down the spine and then up in front of you. Okay, so there's a natural circuit when you're sinking down the spine. There's just a natural circuit between you and the imaginary other, the imaginary opponent. So the energy's coming up their body and then it passes across and down your body. So just up. So just feel that flow. And so when you're standing, it's a struggle to keep everything moving. So when you're still, this is what the Taoists say. You know, when you're still, concentrate on movement, and when you're moving, concentrate on stillness. So even though my body isn't really moving, I'm wanting the energy to move. Otherwise, you tend to become frozen. So down the body and up. So here my arms are quite straight, and then down the body. Yeah. So it's basically just the same as the beginning of the form, you know, when we do this, but just a bit more explicit. So just using the hands and the fingers to direct the energy. The important bit, the bit that we want to catch today, is this feeling of sinking that comes into the rising. So it's my sinking down. And just by virtue of the shape of my body, so I'm sinking into the legs, and that is bringing this up. Yeah? So we're just looking at the correct alignment of the lower back, the lower spine. Any sense of leaning forwards, and I will tend to get the other circuit going the opposite. It'll come up my body. So this is how it is normally, you know, when we're walking especially. People tumble forwards. Yeah? So when people are walking, you get this sense that they're rolling along the ground, they're doing this. They're like a ball that's rolling. So what we want to be is like a shovel that's digging. So we're getting under the ground, not just rolling onto it and over it, but getting through it and lifting up these big shovelfuls of dirt and then throwing them back down on the head. So there's a sense that with each scoop, you're getting a bit deeper. Your spine is getting a bit deeper with each scoop. That's it. Okay. And now let's just alternate them now. So when you're alternating, it's easier to feel how the arm coming up is a product of the relaxation of the shoulder down into the hand. Yeah. So what we're really looking at is how does my relaxation downward produce this upward of the hand. And so as I've just released here, and the hand, just by virtue of the fact that I have this jointed arm, it starts squeezing upwards. Just feel this release, this whole side of the body just releases into itself and away from the center. So you can just relax. Just let the spine bend. So let the head tip to the side. So as the arm comes forwards and up, you should feel like it's getting longer and longer because your shoulder's relaxing into it. So here my arm is growing into this shape as much as extending into it. So, so by the time the hand is coming in, it feels quite a stranger because it's got so far away from me. So all the while, mind in the down chair. So just try not to come up to here. And try and just keep the mind in the down chair. And keep the down chin connected to the ground. So the higher up I want this hand to come, the more I have to sink down the spine and connecting to the opposite leg. And so when you turn to the left, you naturally tend to connect more to the left foot and vice versa. So the energy comes out of the opposite leg and it comes into the same leg. So we're just trying to maintain a balance between what we're doing with the arms and the mind in the down chair and the sinking. Because the activity will always tend to bring us out of the danshin. So we're having to oscillate between the two. So a nice way to think about it is that you've got two eyes. So one eye is connected to this brain, the other eye is connected to this brain. So you've got this binocular vision. So when you're looking at something, you're looking at it from two different places in your own psyche. From the superficial, rational part, which is the head, and the deep feeling part, which is your belly. So this feeling you've got, your feet have got a really good grip of the ground, and it's your legs and your turning that is making this happen in the arms. It's not your arms. Okay. And now just back to here. Yes, mind in the danshin. So the feeling that the danshin is just sucking backwards a little because this part of my back is flattened out. Yeah, so this shape here, ward off, is just a cave. So, you know, ward off is like the cave of the heart, if you like. You can imagine another one here, and your danshin is at the back of that, or going towards the back. So in Tai Chi we receive down here, so the world is coming into the arcaves, and then it just naturally redistributes from the back into the arms and the legs. And you've just got to just feel the strength that's required in the legs firstly, and then secondly the openness here and here, because when these pull in here, first of all it pulls my knees in, and secondly it will make my tailbone stick out, make my bum stick out. So if I want this smooth egg shape for my upper body, this smooth C-shaped spine, then these have to be very open to just hold that up. And hands on the danshin. So you're with this area. You've actually completely withdrawn and you've sucked down into the dantian. And there's all this constant slipping activity in the dantian, in the belly area. So we just want to be with that. It's like your gut sliding over itself, like a bag of snakes, writhing and twisting. Okay, so now let's just rub the hands. If the legs get tired when you just come up, you don't need to be quite so wide. And in a sense, when the legs are bent like this, it's easy to get down here. It's actually more difficult to get into the dantian when your legs are straighter. But it's just easier on the legs if the legs are straight. So relaxing the shoulders into this. And then just place the hands on the belly. So as soon as you touch the body with warm hands, then there's activity in the place that you've touched. So now I can feel this area. I actually have sensation there rather than it just being a theoretical space. I can actually feel it. And what the warmth does, the warmth allows the muscles around to relax, but it also stimulates the dantian to contract into itself. So the dantian is like a center of natural coherence. So we want the dantian to replace the ego when we're fighting, when you're engaged in a spirited way, in a very quick way. So the ego is just terribly unhelpful when you're doing anything real, because it's always taking time to process and to remember and make judgments and all this shit. So when you're fighting, you have to operate from spirit. So everything's automatic, everything's instinctual. So it's all coming from down here. This is your instincts, your primitive drives. So your aggression, your libido, all those things come from here. Okay. So now let's just bring it up a bit. And now just what we want to feel now is this just being heavy. We want to feel like our connection with the ground is elastic. So if you're standing like this, just imagine there's like elastic bands pulling down to the ground. So to actually maintain this posture, I'm having to resist, I'm having to push against this elastic drag that's trying to pull me down. And so particularly think of it like a big long strip of strong elastic that's trying to pull your dantian down. So it's actually easier on the dantian the lower you get, it's just harder on the legs. So when I'm coming up like this, I'm having to stretch this piece of elastic, and then I can just let it go. So pushing up. Yeah. So just consider elastic. It doesn't stop pulling when you stop moving it. So if I stretch a piece of elastic, even though my hands have stopped moving, it will continue pulling. So that's what we want, the feeling of our relationship to gravity. Just because I stop moving, it doesn't mean it's not there. So gravity is still pulling down through me, so I actually have to actively push up through it. So this is what we want to try and feel now, is this sense of standing still, which seems so passive. We want to make it active, and we make it active by just opening up to the process of gravity, so just feel its constant streaming through, so that my legs have to produce a contrary force, a constant streaming up and out. So I have no sense that my legs are just locking me in position. My legs are just providing an upward force that is exactly balancing gravity, and that is producing this illusion of stillness. So gravity is streaming through, and the earth or the legs are streaming up. So this stillness is very sort of wobbly because I haven't locked it. So it's, so if it was pressured, it could easily yield. So you can easily turn, you can easily shift, you can tip. Yeah? It's very fluid. Okay. And now let's just try. So just going with gravity. So just let gravity pull down. Let it split at the sacrum and down the legs, under the ground, and up the walls a little bit. Yeah, so it's like we're painting the room, and then back down. And now this is the ground growing up your legs, coming up as far as the throat or the heart, and then just let it drop down again. So this is the sinking of gravity. It still flows down the legs, under the ground, and then up the walls, and then down. All the while trying to keep that simple curve in the spine. So don't let the bum flick out. So I was teaching a class recently, and one of the students complained that it's all so simple. I want more advanced techniques. So I tried to explain that what makes this advanced is the quality of the mind that you bring to it. It's not the complication of the techniques. So here, the quieter you can get your mind, the more you can be with what you're doing, then the more chance it has of breaking into the realm of energy. So there's something Thich Nhat Hanh said. He said, not long before his stroke, like a few years ago, he said, I've been breathing a long time now, and I've found that I really enjoy it, and there's nothing that I would rather do. Yeah. So it's just that ability to just be with something so simple, and there's nothing you'd rather do. So the mind just has no problem staying on the job because it's not hankering after something else. So just feel this center here, the heart, and just feel it dropping into the dantian. So this is one of John's big things, was that the heart and the dantian, they're combined, they're together, they make one energetic organ. So again, it's like there's a piece of the strip of elastic connecting the heart and the dantian. They're always pulling towards each other. So for me to actually come up like this, I really have to stretch that elastic. Yeah? And so when I go up like this, so what we'll start going up into it now. So you have to be really careful that it doesn't make the bum flick out like this. That is, if anything, it's actually pulling your tail even more under. So for that, you need to keep some tension here to support the strain that the lower back is under as you reach up. And so here we're painting the ceiling and coming back down through the body. And now we're painting the floor. So you're just bringing earth energy up and sending it out, up and out. And then you're bringing sky energy or heaven energy down through the body and into the earth. And whenever we do something like this that's symmetrical, I mean symmetrical left and right rather than up and down, just make sure that you keep turning. So the two hands are always slightly out of phase. One is always leading the other. Yeah? But it's not designed, it's just something that happens because you're soft around the hips and the waist. So to start with, you're moving in order to move the energy, but eventually it's the energy that's moving you. So it's this feeling of, so my body is being dragged through this path by the energy which is preceding it. And I'm not sure where that's coming from. Now, where is that movement coming from? Is it simply because I've set something up and there's certain momentum that's built up? Yeah, so energy is a mysterious business. Ooh. That's right. So you want this sense that that largeness that you're gathering up has to wriggle its way through this narrowness of your torso in order to then get into the expanse underneath. And so it's a bit like the baby wriggling out of the womb. It has to pass through this really narrow tunnel which must hurt terribly in order to get out into the big wide world. Okay, now here, just hold it here. So just hold it here, but keep it going. And so it hasn't frozen, it hasn't stopped, it's just gone into ultra slow motion. So it's at that point of return, and it can't quite decide. And so it's hovering, got this sense of hovering, and then just go with it. So that's how we would like our stillness to be. We're still because we're hovering at a point of return, not because we've locked everything into a hard stillness. Same thing here. It's still going up, but it's beginning to come down, and those are just balanced. And it feels really, it's a difficult place to dwell because it's really tender and a little bit sort of too open for its own good, and then you just go with it. Yeah, so this point of balance, this dynamic equilibrium here between what's coming up, what's going down, is where we would like to have the courage to dwell. So whenever we're still, we're consumed by all these forces that are sort of balancing to produce this stillness. But inside they're sort of building up, so it's almost like a volcano is threatening to go off. And then you just let it release. So when you start moving, it actually feels like a relief, like a release from the tension that's built up in the stillness. Let's try one more. So here. Just imagine you've just come out of the shower. So the water's dripping off your arms, but also the steam is rising from your arms. So you're in this tender place, you're getting cold because you're wet. You're naked, so you feel a little bit vulnerable. And then just let it drop. And again, just getting into the danshan. So whenever we do anything, we come out of the danshan, that's the problem. Okay, now let's just squat down. So just going down. Ooh, it's a hard one. And so just using the knees, the elbows, just push the knees out, using the knees to push the hands together. And just shifting from leg to leg a little bit, just to help open up the hips and the sacroiliacs, the two most important joints in the body in Tai Chi terms. So it's where the upper and the lower body join up. So if they're not relaxed and open, then you can't get energy to flow past from lower to upper. And so you're having to just use the arms in a forceful way. Okay, now what we want to do now is just try and just get some idea of how the legs must feel. supporting us all the time. So if you think that the legs and the arms are doing opposite functions, so my legs are supporting me, so they're normally like these two workhorses or these two slaves that are underneath me, holding me up, planted on the ground, sandwiched, pressured all the time. Whereas the arms just hang by my sides and they're free to express themselves and to interact. So what we want to do now is just let the arms feel what it's like to be legs. So we just put the hands on the ground and just bring some weight over them. And just let them fill up with strength, this supporting strength. So it feels like the arms connect in your spine to make an arch. So you're just loading the arch. Your elbows are wanting to go out the side, but your knees are holding them in. And you just let that fill up. It takes a few seconds. And so the arms are now supporting you. You don't, it doesn't have to be all of your weight in bringing over the arms, but just enough to feel them having to do something they're not used to. And then just rock back onto the feet and feel the arms slowly emptying of that effort until they're empty and free of the ground. So we're looking at full and empty. So now my legs are full of my weight, but the arms are empty. So emptiness is basically very energetic. It's got lots of potential. It can move, it can express, it can come in, it can go out. So I want to just feel that in the hands. You can feel the hands are going back to their normal tingly self. Okay, now just put the hands on the ground. Don't put any weight into them yet, just place the hands down. So just feel the ground earthing that sort of superficial fizzy energy. So the earth is just sucking that excess agitated activity out of your arms. And then as you bring the weight over them, just feel how the strength grows up from the ground. So as you're bringing the weight over the arms, the pressure that your hands are putting the ground up is squeezing something up the arms. And slowly it comes all the way past the elbows and up to the shoulders and then connects at the back and makes an arch. So it's like inside your arms, there's an arch of something from the ground. So John used to say it feels like molten rock, not in the sense of being hot, but in the sense of being fluid. So this thing that's flowed up the arms has got a sort of crystalline structure. It's sort of granitic with all these small crystals. And this sense that it could quite easily just set into like an arch of rock. And then as you bring the weight back, just feel it dropping down so it separates at the back, flows past the shoulders, down past the elbows, down into the hands. And then just feel how you've got to make a bit of an effort to actually pull the hands off the ground now, so the ground doesn't really want to release your hands. So you actually have to, you suck the hands up, and okay, now they're free. So what we're looking at, what makes this work advanced, is the fact that we're looking at the psychology. We're looking at the mind. And so we're using simple movement to actually look carefully and deeply at the mind. And it's not, it's the whole mind. It's not the rational mind. It's more like the emotional mind. So let's try it again. So just put the hands on the ground and just feel how that makes you feel. Yeah? So when the hands are on the ground, it's like now they're trapped. They've just got to accept what's going to happen. So they've lost that sort of light, expressive cheerfulness. And then as you slowly bring the weight over the arms have no choice but to bear your weight, and they just do it as manfully as they can. The ground is growing up the arms. Yeah, and if you can practice this, then just try and get it so you can take the feet off the ground, so that you can release the feet, and then you can then feel the emptiness in the legs. Yes, that's more difficult to feel. And then just rocking back into the legs, feel the legs filling up and the arms emptying, but the arms are still trapped because they're still stuck on the ground, the hands. Then as you lift the hands from the ground, just feel that lightness that comes into you, because now your hands are free and they can express themselves. Now let's just put the hands down again. Okay, now what we want to do now is just lift one hand and keeping the other hand on the ground. But I want to lift the hand because I've shifted my weight. I'm turning and pushing myself into the other hand. So I'm pushing one hand down in order to release the other hand. It just needs to come off the ground just a couple of inches. And just feel that flow from the hand that's on the ground, up the arm, across the back, and into the hand that's up. So you're just using your weight, you're pushing your weight a little bit into that hand that's on the ground to help squeeze that flow of energy up and out. And so it's not just a matter of getting the hand on the ground and bringing the weight into it. You have to do something with the arm. So you have to squeeze a little bit. It's like squeezing the tube of toothpaste. Yeah, so you just wrap your hand around the toothpaste and squeeze and something comes out the end. So the same thing here. You're pushing the ground a little bit with the hand and something is coming up. So I'm pressuring the ground with my hand and my weight in order to get something to come up the arm and into the free hand. And then you put the free hand down and press into that and allow the other one to release and come up. So you're just switching. Yeah. So I'm just shifting my weight slightly now to my left side so I can drive into that hand that's on the ground. Yeah, and it's the same feeling of the ground coming up the arm as we had when we were leaning over the arms. So I'm pressing down into the ground with my left hand, and something is coming up the arm and flowing into the open hand. And then one more the other side. So put the hand on the ground and then slowly shift your weight across to that hand until the other one is able to come off the ground. So the work is actually in the hand that's on the ground and the arm that's connected to it. But the expression, the energy is in the other hand. You're not concerned with that. Your concern is with the work, is with the motor. And the more you can take your mind off the energy, the more chances that it has of manifesting. Okay, let's try one more the other side. So hand down, squeeze down, press into the ground, and then that will allow you to release the other hand. And now just really press. Yes. Once you get the energy coming up the arm, you can distribute it wherever you like. You can get it to come into the skull, it can go down the spine into the sacrum. Yeah, so that's the sense in which your mind directs the energy. Right, and then back to here. Okay, now let's come up again. It takes a while to get up. Okay, now just that feeling that we had when we were down there, of that one hand on the ground and the other one up, and just somehow just squeezing, just working this arm in order to get the energy, encourage the energy to come up and out. So we need that same feeling in the legs. So when my legs are supporting me, yeah, in one sense they're like these still workhorses, they're like two pillars, they're just holding me up. But in another sense they're constantly wriggling. Yay. So my legs are sort of working against each other and tussling in order to wriggle the energy up, if you like. It's like I have to, in the same way that when I was leaning on the floor, it just took a while for the energy to come through, for that growth, that sort of inflection to creep up the arm. The same thing here. So in one sense, I'm still and content. But in another sense, I'm actually quite agitated, in the sense that I'm starting to bring turns in. So this is what the turning really is. The turning is you getting the energy of the legs into the hands. Yeah? So just imagine that I had hold of someone here and I just wanted to really give them a good shake. Yeah? Then it would come from here. It wouldn't really be this, unless it was a child. And if it was an adult, it was someone that's got my size, then I'd have to turn. So I'd be bringing this in, And so you can see how that's sort of tussling between the legs. My legs are trying to sort of keep me still, but my waist is forcing some movement out. And that sort of battling type energy is what then filters through into my hand. So it has a natural contest, a natural contention to it. It's what we call spirit. So there's like an edge. It's almost like a nasty edge to the energy. Yeah. So I'm standing here, in one sense I've got this, I've got gravity. So gravity is what the outside world is doing to me. So this is my passive sense, if you like. But now what am I doing to the world? I'm turning and I'm making a nuisance of myself and I'm stirring everything up. I'm making the whole room know that I'm here. Yeah? So the simplest exercise is this. It's just not terribly active, but let's just start it. Yeah, so here we're just turning. So the turning is throwing you out, but it's also gathering the world in. So it's like a radial gravity, if you like. Okay, now let's just bring it back to here. Okay, so that was the waist turning. Okay, now what we want to do really is get the turning not to come from here. So it's not me turning the hips, it's me working the legs that is actually producing the turn. Yeah? So I'm sinking and I'm just getting one leg to straighten and I'm allowing them to twist past each other. So this leg is trying to push me forwards, this leg is trying to push me back, and it's that that's effectuating the turn. Yeah? So my two legs are very much fighting against each other, but they're slipping past each other all the time. So that this tussling, this turn is not a gentle flowing thing like this. It's much more what you would have to use if you really wanted to get underneath someone and lift them up. Yeah? So we're using the legs to work. Yeah? So it's more like a sort of piston action rather than a round one. So just imagine someone's really pressing down on you, forcing you into those legs. Yeah, so it's your sinking plus the legs protesting, if you like, against their status as slaves to the sinking. So the legs are trying to squeeze through that. The legs are fighting the sinking, and I'm allowing that fight to come up through my body rather than bring my body up. So I'm getting the legs to press. So here, this leg is really squeezing up through into this hand, and then the other side. Yeah? So just think in terms of pulling in a rope. So you're using the legs to actually drive one hand forward and pull it in. And then just back to here. And now just feel the legs. And we're just trying to wake the legs up, to wake up the spirit in the legs, if you like, almost like an anger. It's like the legs they're like these horses that have been tied down their whole life and they just want to be free and just fly. But if they want to fly, they're going to have to come up through the body, not bring the body up. And this is what they'll do. If you just let them work, then they will find a path. They'll wriggle their way through into your hands. So when we're standing like this, it's my legs fighting gravity that actually enables me to stand like this for as long as I want. Yeah, the fact that my legs are squeezing energy up through me into the hands. So when you're standing like this, you should feel that if gravity suddenly disappeared, so if suddenly there was no gravity, then basically you would just explode. Yeah? The internal pressure is so strong, balancing gravity plus the atmospheric pressure, that the forces inside would you'd be blown to pieces. Not only would you fly up from the ground, but everything would just fly away from this center. So you're sinking gravity, the atmosphere, it's all pressing this into a seemingly peaceful, placid ball, but there's tremendous pressure inside. So this is how the sinking generates spirit. So just by standing and refusing to let yourself freeze, refusing to let your mind wander, then you're just keeping everything under tremendous pressure, and gradually you get angry. And that's all spirit is. Spirit is like impersonal anger. It's like a fire that's beginning to rage inside you. So the Tibetans, they imagine that their danshan is like a little fire that's smouldering. And they imagine there's like a little canister of oil on the top of their head, and every now and then a little drop of oil flows down and hits the fire, and the fire just, for a moment, it just rages. This is how they generate their internal heat when they do those exercises, to sit on the mountain naked in the winter. Yeah, so if you feel it getting you down, then just get another drop of oil. So, I'm reading psychoanalysis at the moment because I just find it so interesting. But there they talk about oscillating between the paranoid schizoid phase, so the crazy phase, and the depressed phase. So you can think of gravity being the depressed phase. It's actually just pressing me into some sort of stillness. Now the crazy phase actually comes from me. It's being generated inside me. And I'm just put myself in this field where the two can balance. They can find some sort of uneasy peace that's always about to explode. Yeah? Just like where I live. Yes, this is why, it's actually, there's something interesting about living in a war zone, where it's always threatening to explode into flame. Just imagine you had to stand like this for an hour. So what would you do? You go through so many psychological shifts and changes inside. There comes a point where you'd start praying. There comes a point where you'd start singing. Another point where you'd start screaming. You'd have a great time. You just become pure expression by the end. Yeah? Held in by the discipline of your own thinking. Okay, now let's just bring the arms up into the chimney. We call this the chimney. And so the arms take a rest here because different muscles being used to hold them up. So feel gravity is dragging me down. It's like the flesh in my body is trying to melt down and drip down my legs. But the energy from the legs is streaming up through the flue of this chimney I've created. So it's like there's a beam of energy firing up at the ceiling. So just feel the tightness you need in the down chin to stop your bum from flicking out. Yeah, so this needs to be pulled in so that you can keep that flatness in the lower back. And then just out here. And you just offer thanks. And then, so now everything's coming back into the down chair. So just let the eyes close for a few seconds.